Hi, this is Swan from Swan Amity Studios. Today we're going to be working on a little binding tutorial to talk about how to deal with non-right angles in your binding. Both exterior angles, this one is a 120-degree angle, and also interior angles, those cleavages that are kind of hard to get through. We're going to talk about how to do everything we need to do on the machine to attach the binding in this video. And in part 2, you'll find the information on how to do the needlework to turn it over by hand. Little additional things you'll need to know for the handwork. So, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, we're just on the machine. So, setting up, we have our walking foot on, just right here. And I do my binding at 3/8 of an inch. And I use a 2.5 inch binding. Turned over. This is bias binding, folded in half and ready to go, just like that. So we'll set that aside. We're just going to show you here that we've used our ideal seam gauge here, dropped our needle down at the 3/8 inch mark, and set up our tape to the side. So now we know that all of our seams are going to go in at 3/8 of an inch to attach our binding. So here we go. We just have a little sample set up here just to show you what we're up to with both types of angles. We're going to get our binding ready to go, and now see, because we're binding at 3/8 of an inch, this is our 1/4 inch right here. So we cut our binding, our edge, when we are squaring up the quilt, just a little bit outside of that to make sure that those points are right at 3/8 of an inch all the way around. So this is about 1/8 of an inch of batting and the backing material that you'll see on the outside there. So when I line up my binding, I'm not lining up with the edge of the quilt fabric, I'm lining up with the edge of the batting. That'll give us 3/8 of an inch and a fuller binding as we finish up. We're getting ready to attach. We need to know where this mark is. This is our seam here coming out to that first 120 degree angle. So we're going to feel for that with our finger right there, and with our pin we're going to make an indicator so that when we get our needle to that point we'll be ready to stop. So getting started, bring our project under the foot, line up with our tape here so we know where we belong, and we're going to stitch to the pin. There we are at the pin. We're ready to take the pin out, and we're going to stop here, turn our piece, and stitch right straight towards the point of that first angle. Break the thread, and now you can see we stitch straight down that way. If I fold that open, there was that first 120 degree angle. There's the point. That's exactly what we're looking for. As we fold that out, just like you would a traditional 90-degree angle binding, you're going to pull that to the side so that the edge of the binding material looks like it's going in a straight line from the edge that we're now going to turn towards. Here we've got this edge, this turn, lining up with that center line on the seam, and we're going to put a pin in to hold that in place, and we're going to turn that edge so that we're right in line with where we plan on binding the next edge. And we're going to put a little pin in that to make that stay where it belongs, just like that. Let's go ahead and head towards our next 120 degree angle. As we get close to it, remember we need to set a little pin in there so that we know when to stop and change direction. So that I felt for the seam, I put the pin in line where the seam is, and we stitch all the way to the pin. I'm just going to shorten my stitch just a little bit to come to the pin, take the pin out. We're going to turn the piece and we're going to stitch once again straight towards the point. Break the thread, just like that. Once again, outside edge, see we're pulling back and we've landed right where we need to be, right on that seam coming into that point. So if this is 120 degrees, we're right on that 60-degree turn. Just like that. Pin into place and turn our binding towards the next edge and pin into place. We're going to start from the outside edge again. We're lined up on the tape and we're going to stitch towards that interior angle, that little cleavage. Now, as we come up to that cleavage, just like we were doing with the previous outside angles, we need to put a little pin in to show us when we're going to hit that interior angle too, right there. You feel for the seam, you put the pin right in on top. Now I've landed where the pin is. Now I need to do something just a little bit differently than I would normally do with those outside angles. I need to back stitch just a little bit. And now I'm going to break thread. Okay? So we're not going to turn that edge as we would a traditional edge. With an interior angle, we're going to check to make sure that we hit that seam, and we did. And now we need to not have that excess bulk for turning a corner. We're not doing an outside edge. So, dealing with the inside edge, we're going to pull the binding to the side, just like that, so that this actually makes the corner start to look like a corner on the outside, so that the fold, if you can see that, is actually on the inside corner right there. Now, as we turn that edge, we want to line that up. Now notice that means we're not going to be able to stitch part of that. We can't fit our needle in there. So we push this out as far as we can to the side so we can start stitching as soon as possible. And we put a little pin into that space to hold that out of our way. In part 2, we'll show you how we get that stitched down. Just a little bit of handwork, but it's worth it for a prettier cleavage in your projects. Here we go. We're going to start stitching again. We're lining up in the machine right on the tape, needle back down into the binding and the quilt. And now we're going to stitch about 4 or 5 stitches and back stitch to lock that into place, and then we continue. We're coming up on another outside corner, so we would pin that one into place, just like that. This is our last outside edge. So as we come up to the pin, we take the pin out. Once again, remember we're going to turn. Notice we didn't do that on the inside edge, and we're going to stitch towards the point. Break the thread and turn as we did before. This is everything that you need to know for attaching in the beginning on the machine. Everything else that you need to know for turning over that edge and for bringing it over to the back is going to be in the hand stitch section of part 2. Now if you're looking for a little check, did I do it right? Any of those outside corners should be able to fold over to the back and begin to line up. with your stitched line. This is our stitched line of our binding. We're coming over to the edge and we can cover that stitch line. On the other side, here we go. We can cover that stitch line. We did it right. Okay, I'll see you in part 2. Thank you for watching.